Hey everyone, and welcome back to another Just the FAQs Model Workers. This is Gen24 along with Peter coming to bring you the frequently asked questions found all over the internet, the interwebs, on our forums, and just good, useful information that a lot of people seem to want to know. If you listened to last week, you'll realize that Peter and I are in the middle of a rainstorm, so if you hear any weird noises, this is the same recording session. So yeah, it's still raining a lot. Actually, as soon as we hit record, it started pouring. I was like, oh, that's great. But on this episode of Just the FAQs, we are going to be talking about colors. And you're probably sitting there like, what colors are you going to be talking about?
Well, I'm going to talk about yellow.
You're going to talk, yellow. I'm going to talk about purple. And that's all we're talking about, yellow and purple. No, but for real, what we're going to discuss today is primary, secondary, and tertiary colors, because this honestly should build most of what you utilize to paint. Now, it's actually a lot simpler than what it sounds. Now, Peter, what is the primary colors?
Your primary colors are yellow, blue, and red.
And what defines a primary color?
That is your base color for pigment that you can't break down into anything else.
Haha, threw him a curveball and he smacked it out of the park. So that's exactly what it is, folks. When a color cannot be broken down any further, that's your primary color, primary being first. And red, yellow, and blue are the colors that cannot be broken down any further to another base color. But what about a color like green?
Well, green is a secondary color because you can mix two primary colors together to make that secondary color. In this case, it's blue and yellow.
And that's also 100% correct. Green is a secondary color, and the secondary colors are simply purple, green, and orange. And that's because you're combining red and blue to make purple. You're combining yellow and red to make orange. And in the aforementioned example, you're mixing yellow and blue to equal green.
Now, properly, a secondary color is a 50-50 mix of your primary colors. And that's because when you get to your tertiary colors, which is coming up now, you're mixing other ratios.
Right. The tertiary colors, you're mixing a primary color with a secondary color, such as when you mix green together with blue, you get teal. So you're going to find yourself with 3 primaries, 3 secondaries, and 6 tertiary colors to equal the big 12 of the colors that you're going to primarily utilize while painting.
Now, it helps that I'm actually looking at a color wheel while we're talking about this. So if you take your primary colors and you put them in a triangle, for instance, like the radiation symbol, and you have yellow at the top, and at sort of 7 o'clock you have blue, and at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock you have red, then you can start mixing your primaries together to make your secondaries, and you put them directly opposite.
Yeah, so what you'll want to do is you can actually utilize something that's like a Star of David, adding that second triangle in there, and at those points, that's where you're combining your 2 primaries together to create the secondary mixture. And at those points, you're going to be getting your greens, your oranges, and your purples. And then at each point in between those 6 colors, you're going to want to add another point, and that's where the tertiary colors come in.
That's right. And once you've done that, once you've got a color wheel either in your mind or physically in front of you, then you can actually see which primary colors and secondary colors and even the tertiary colors are complementary to each other, so you can then start looking at what works on your miniature to work as highlights and shades.
Yeah, exactly. Whenever you're looking at the color wheel, you can actually break down what is complementary. So in the example of, say, yellow, you can look on the color wheel and you'll see that purple is directly across, meaning that's the complementary color to yellow. And that's really important for miniature painting.
Yeah, because if you're doing shadows, if you're trying to darken a yellow, a newbie painter will throw some black in there and end up with a grey sludge. Where actually, if you want to mix a darker yellow, drop in a little bit of purple, and that will darken your yellow into the correct range that you're still working in. It'll look like a darker yellow as opposed to a grey mess.
Exactly, and that's useful as well. Also, knowing what the analogous colors and the triad colors are also incredibly useful as well, because especially the triads. So what a triad is, it's somewhat similar to a complementary color, except it's like if you're making almost like a peace sign, where it's except only in 3 different directions. So as the example, if you're going to use yellow, the triad colors are blue and red. And you can utilize those in shading and shadows as well, by mixing yellow with a little bit of blue. You'll get the green tones in that way, and same on the other side when you go to the oranges.
Yeah, and that's basically taking the colour that you're starting with, looking at its complementary colour, and then breaking down the complementary colour in the 2 constituent parts that make up that complementary colour.
But that's getting into color theory, and that's a topic in and of itself, if not 3 or 4. Color theory is one of those that, it can be a doozy. This is basically just to break it down to you guys on what is if someone refers to the basic concepts of a complementary color, or what is a primary color, what is a secondary color, and what is a tertiary color. And I understand a lot of people know what primary and secondaries are. Now, one thing to keep in mind when you are painting is additive versus subtractive. So what that means is in light, you subtract colors to get other colors. In painting, you add colors to get other colors. Perfect example. In light, white is everything. It's all colors together merging to form to be a perfect white, while black is where there's nothing. But with paint, white is there's no pigments, where black is a mixture of everything. In theory, you're supposed to be able to mix equal parts of all the primaries and get a black, but that doesn't work out. You actually get a brown. It's the one little flaw within the additive color theory deal. So if you're ever wanting to paint a brown as well, mix just a little bit of all 3 of the colors together, and you can actually play with the tones of the brown. Because brown is one of those odd colors. Browns and grays fall outside of the entire the color wheel per se. So, Peter, is there anything else that you want to talk about in the realm of color wheels and whatnot?
No, I mean, I've been painting for 20-odd years, and colour theory is still a day-by-day thing that I'm learning and finding new things that are interesting and that work. And every now and then go back to the basics. Remind myself primary, secondary, tertiary colours and why they work together, rather than just going straight off half-cocked on some magical colour theory tour. Go straight back to the beginning.
And sometimes, a lot of the stuff that applies to color theory, it sounds great on paper, but once you try to apply it to a miniature, it doesn't work as well. Now, the one thing that I will say that works within color theory, and we'll talk about this more on the actual color theory episode, is complementary colors. Whenever you're painting something that's primarily cool tones and blues, putting 1 or 2 items in there that are reds and oranges really make the miniature pop. It breaks things up. And that's another thing you need to keep in mind, are color breaks within your miniature as well, is to utilize the complementary colors to provide these color breaks, and that's really good for separating different areas or drawing attention, like having a primarily blue model and painting its eyes red, or to paint a necklace around its neck red. That'll draw the eye in because it's startlingly different than the rest of the model that's surrounding it. So everyone, thank you for tuning in to Models Workshop Just the Facts, the info podcast for you to learn some cool things that you might not have known about and to reinforce some of the things that you have known about. This episode was brought to you by the US and UK edition of the After Hours podcast, a comedy podcast for the adult painter or someone who just likes a little bit of rowdy humor. You can find us at www.models-workshop.com and on Patreon at patreon.com/modelsworkshop. You can also come over to Facebook and slap a like down and talk to us over there. And that's at facebook.com/The Models Workshop. If you want to talk to Peter or I, you can reach me on Twitter at NWH Podcast and Peter at
Mini Model Paint.
All right. Feel free to give us a buzz. We try to be helpful and we try to be there for people who need it. So thank you, folks.